This video is a prize. You just won. Congratulations. You are here for the first tutorial at Sandy Draws. This is a brand new channel for me. I have a big channel that has like 1,800 videos on it. So this is not my first rodeo, but I have this little place now where I'm going to focus on drawing, and I'm super excited to meet with you every Tuesday and then a little bit here and there in between and do some drawing. I'll be doing all different levels of drawing, different mediums and stuff. But yeah, we're going to focus on drawing. Now, another reason that this video is a prize is because it was suggested by the person who did win a prize. And this person was selected to win my reindeer drawing that I did before Christmas. This person asked me if I would do a winter scene with a house or a barn and trees. And I found the most beautiful picture, and I just had all these ideas for how to capture that light because I love light. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's buckle in. So we're going to get started with basically paper and pencil. And this is a Bienfang Bristol board. It's a little bit heavier than some of the papers that I normally use, and I'm going to use a Sgraffito technique that I want to have a heavier paper for. This is basically my favorite pencil to draw with, and it is a very old one. I've had this one since college, and I've had this sharpener as well. They do make a little handheld one, and you can see that one over on my Substack today if you're interested, but this pencil gets so dang sharp. So today, this is the reference photo that I'm going to be working with, and I'm going to do some adaptations. But my recommendation and the way that my process always works is just to sketch the shapes, not the house. Don't think about whether it looks like a house. Think about what is the shape of it. And for this house, it's basically a third, and a third. So a third of it reaches up to the big A-frame at the top of the roof, and then another third, it has a little bend in the roof, and then it goes over to the left. So I'm just looking for that shape. I'm looking for things that relate to each other. I'm looking for where the windows line up with each other at the top, bottom, whatever, however, things line up on architecture. I don't know the names of everything, but I don't need to know the names. All I need to do is see where things are in relation to each other. What is the size they are in relation to each other? And I'm looking for where the wood pile is and the posts on it and the fabric that's covering them, like the tarp that's over the wood. All that stuff, I'm just looking for the placement of them by the shapes. If you'd like to see this drawing slower and in real time, it's over on my big channel, my Sandy Allnock's Art Venture channel. I will have a link to that in the doobly-doo, and hopefully at the end of this video as well. I'm doing some kind of preview videos over there so that people who don't know that I've got a drawing channel get to see part of it, and then they'll hear about the rest of this one being here. So I'm continuing with the shapes, just, different roof shapes. I'm looking for where they end in reference to points I already have drawn. So where does the second roof and the third roof, where do they come out from the roof line? And how far out do they go? Where is the next window, and what's its size and ratio compared to the windows I've already drawn? And you can see I am a very loose, sketchy kind of sketcher. I don't necessarily do just one line. There are artists who can do that, and they just do one nice clean line. No, not me. I just kind of go for it. And, I change my lines. I clean them up. I figure out, okay, do I want to try to put another detail in here? I realized I didn't leave room for that border. There's a little border on the house. It's kind of a thickness to the roof. I think it's just a little decorative something or other, but I had to move the window down to make room for that. And one of the ways that I knew that, by the way, is to take this photo into my phone and I brightened it. Because a lot of things you can't really see when it's darks within darks. So I brightened it so I could see it better. And that really helped me to see some of the details. So I went in then and refined some of the final details after I got some of that erasing done. and I wanted to double check the perpendiculars, which are the horizontals and verticals. When you're working on a house, it's like really important to make sure that the walls are straight. And I am really famous for not doing my walls particularly straight because when you're working on a flat desk, you're looking at your paper at an angle, and just using a little, this is a child's T-square. I think I got it for like $4 about a dozen years ago, and it has stood me in good stead, even though most of the numbers are really rubbing off, but whatever. And I'm looking for things that I can line up. I want to make sure that the windows are lined up across with the windows that they're supposed to line up with, etc. My next step is to start blocking in some values. And I'm not going to show you absolutely every square inch of this drawing, by the way, because you would be bored to tears. So instead of speed drawing through the rest of it, I'm going to do real-time drawing, just less of it, so you can at least get the idea of what my process is. So I'm putting in values, and I'm looking for areas that I want to start with that will have some of the darks, some of the lights, and then some midtones, because if I can set those properly at the beginning, then I won't have to go back and add more to it later, because there's nothing like getting to the end of your drawing and realizing you didn't have any good value range in there. So I try to find a spot for that. And over on the porch side is where I think I got there's like a good range in that little section. So I started putting in some details there. I also took out, there's like either a sign or a swing set or something out in front. I did eliminate that, and I discussed it over on my other channel in the slower video. I got out my Swiss spurs, and these are something that I got, I think, at Costco. I have not found them online, but they do have a harder surface, a stiffer surface than do Q-tips. So I'm just using that to very softly mush around the graphite so that it starts to get more blendy, because I've used kind of cross-hatching as I was trying to put the values in, and I wanted to kind of soften them up a little bit so that you don't see as many of the cross-hatch type lines, but it'll get all filled in by the time it's all done. So you can see how long it took me to do this. It was a couple hours of work to get that far. So blended all of that in, got those nice dark walls on the home, or I think it's a cabin as opposed to a home. I suppose somebody could be lucky enough to live in that full time. So I'm putting in next some detail with contrast, and there are a lot of things I've eliminated from this drawing. I've eliminated a lot of the lawn furniture that they have out in the back. Like I said, that little swing set thing out front, etc. But I'm going to keep some things. And for contrast, if you want to do something like glowing light coming out of windows, like I'm erasing here with a kneaded eraser, then you need to have enough contrast, enough color on that wall before you start erasing to create that glow. And that's one place where a lot of people will just not get dark enough. They don't have the patience to get dark enough. And for me, doing that is like super important. I combined a 4B in my lead holder pencil that I had showed you at the beginning, and also used a 9B, Grafwood 9B pencil. And the two of those together work really nicely. The 9B gets really dark. It's a very dark pencil, but this lead holder is a pencil that gets so sharp I can get the finest details. And if there's any place where I have a really sharp edge, that pencil will get into it, whereas this one doesn't. It's just a regular old big, soft 9B pencil, and I love the value that it gives me. But sometimes around the edges of a shape like this, I'm going to have to go in with that 4B super sharp pencil to give it that really crisp edge, because it just doesn't do that because it's a soft pencil. And the 4B is the best one for the lead holder pencil. They do make them in 6B, but it breaks a lot because it's not supported by a whole lot. It's just supported by that holder. And when you put it in the sharpener, the tips always break off when it's a 6B. So the 4B is like the one that I use the most for that one. Now, making a mask was the thing that I did next because once I finished the building, I wanted to work on the trees and not mess with all of the snow that I already had on the building. So I wanted to protect all of that. So I just got some cheap tracing paper. It doesn't have to be rocket science. If you have tracing paper that's thinner so you can really see through it, it's great. I do have some tracing paper that's heavy, but sometimes you can't really see fine details through it. So just a really simple paper like this will work great. Now, I have used Frisket film before, but Frisket would just lift up a lot of this graphite. It would just pull it up when I remove the Frisket. So just taping on a little piece of paper like this is going to do it actually a lot better because I can just lay it over and tape it on. And it's real easy to just trace around these outline shapes on this house. So if you want to try this drawing, you can simplify it a lot. You don't have to do all the crazy detail I did, but you can just make a little mask like this. And it's really easy to cut out because it's very simple shapes. So I've removed the pencil outlines. And the reason is because I want to create a background that's going to define those snowy shapes. And rather than have just a line around them, which I know is fine. You know, people don't expect that you would not have a line around it, but you're going to see the difference when I eventually get this done, the difference that it makes to not have a line around the snow because objects around you don't have lines around them. It's just not what we see in reality in the world around us. So this Sgraffito technique is one that I've used quite a bit. I used it on the reindeer for the whiskers, but I thought I would do something where I can talk about the Sgraffito a little bit more for another use because a lot of people use it for whiskers and little hairs and that kind of thing, but you can also use it for trees. So I started by putting in a couple of tree trunks and I'm moving trees around in this drawing. I'm not putting them exactly where they are and putting branches exactly where they are. I just put the tree trunks in here so I could create some horizontal and angled and, kind of curved lines for the snow. And I was just looking at the picture kind of as a reference for what kind of lines and shapes could I put in here. Now, I am the weirdo that often will do this kind of work, these kind of trees, just by hand and not doing the Sgraffito technique because sometimes I find it just ends up looking a little bit awkward. Like here, you can see the shapes of them, and you can't see it really, really well when you're doing it. You have to look at an angle, and you can end up with funky shapes to them, and that's what I just kind of don't like. If I do the negative drawing myself, then I can actually control that a little bit better. But most people don't want to do that much negative drawing, so I'll just go ahead and use this technique. Now, this pencil, like I said, is really sharp. So I'm using the side of it and going over it in a couple different directions. If I were to use this pencil and just kind of hold it vertically, then the pencil could end up going into all those divots in the paper that I just made. So what you want is for your pencil to lay on top of the paper and not go down into those divots or else they'll disappear. I'm doing it in light layers because, I can slowly build that up. You'll see that again in a few minutes because the more layers you put down, you can build it up. If you start using a dark pencil like this one, if it's really sharp, it can also go down into those cracks. And if you have one that you want to get rid of, that's great because you can get rid of those little lines if they looked funky in what you drew with the scoring tool. By the way, my scoring tool, I don't even know if it exists. I'm hoping by the time I write my Substack post for this that I find my little tool. I've had it for like 30 years, so I have no idea if they still make it. But I will try to find an alternate to put in the supply list. Let's see. I also am drawing in some of these pines that are out here. And I'm drawing these in the way that I normally would do when I said I do negative drawing. I'm drawing around where I would put the snow instead of using this Sgraffito technique because I thought you might like to see how that is done. I'm basically just leaving white spaces where the snow would be. And I know a lot of people just can't think that way. It's like a backwards thinking, drawing all the not things. We're drawing the the green branches instead of drawing the white snow. But I was trying to play around too with each of the trees. I had some that were big and blocky and had a lot of value, like the pines, and then balancing that out with some very delicate trees. So over on the right here, since the paper is going to end, I'm not going to put a hard edge on it. I wanted it to be very soft. Then I wanted something where I can make these trees a little bit fade out, make them just a little softer. So I'm using the heavy 9B pencil to get more big lines, big, trunks of the trees and the bigger branches. But as you get away from the trunk of the tree, all your branches should get lighter and thinner and smaller. If you end up like throwing a really big, heavy branch out there in the middle of nothing, it's not going to look right, because we're all used to seeing how trees will get lacier and lacier and more delicate as you move away from the trunk of the tree. So this pencil, the fact that it gets so sharp is also really good, because it can really do fine lines if you need those. But you can see how this Sgraffito makes it look like there's some white branches going horizontally across the front of that area. And here I'm going to do it again. I've got this Sgraffito tree that has been drawn in here with the scoring tool. And I was playing around with, my scoring tool has two sides to it. One is bigger, one's smaller, just to see what that does. But as I get another layer on there, it just starts to appear more. You just start to see more of it each time you go a little bit darker, and I'm just going at different angles. It's a little awkward with my mask. That little chimney was kind of a pain, but it was doable. But you can see it slowly builds up to make it work so that it looks like those are white tree branches in front of a dark tree. So then when I draw the dark tree up at the top, I bring parts of it down to draw some negative places in between. So it looks like that tree, with all of its spaces between the branches, are continuing behind those white trees in the front. So it's kind of a combination of my negative drawing plus just trying to use the Sgraffito that's there to create the appearance of a tree that's behind it. But little by little, all of these shapes and different values, different kinds of trees, are each going to make an outline around the snow without me drawing an outline around the snow. So I'm going to make one more mask for the last step in this drawing, and that is to mask out all of the windows, because I had this brilliant idea when I saw the photograph, and it was like black and white photo with just golden light in the windows. And I wanted to add that golden light. And I haven't used like a medium like this with my my graphite previously. Well, at least maybe not recently, at least. Haven't done it in a long time. But I thought an airbrush would work really well. Airbrush just lays things down on top very gently. So if you don't use marker strokes on it, then it won't show up looking like marker. But I have a Copic airbrush, and I thought that would be really good to use. So got out a knife and trimmed out those windows. Again, using a really simple piece of tracing paper to do this. And if you're cutting out little masks like this, you can even save the scraps of the tracing paper and use them again for some other project. I have all sorts of scraps that I save for all kinds of things. But you can see how this will have little windows that will make that work. And then it's just airbrushing the light. Now the Copic airbrush, you can get this kind of air little gun thing, and it's attached by a long cord to my compressor on the floor. And then I can put the marker in with the chisel nib pointing outward, and then just start spraying it onto those windows. And it just gives a wonderful glow to them. And I used a light yellow and then a medium yellow and then a more of an orangey color, because I just kind of saw a little bit more of that orangey glow that I wanted in them. And you do have to be careful that you don't do a wild overspray. Airbrush takes a while to kind of figure out and get used to how you can use it, but it worked really well for this process. There's one place that I kind of wish that I had paid a little more attention to what I was doing, which was when I removed this section on the porch, because I wanted to add a little bit of color so you can get the idea that there's a window on that side where that light's coming out. And this is one of the reasons why I avoided that, whatever that thing was, that porch swing or whatever, because I wanted to have this glow. But I overdid the yellow and the orange just a little bit. And I kind of wish I had left more white in there. But, not everything can be perfect, right? But I still love this. I love the way that the windows glow. It just makes you feel very warm and fuzzy when you look at the drawing. So I had a couple last details that I wanted to use just to do some tidying up. I wanted to add more light coming out of the windows now that I had this glow. I debated whether or not I could just airbrush those spots and make it yellow glowing out the windows. And then I thought, no, because if I overspray, I'm really going to be in trouble. And I'll be very sad if I overdo it and have too much yellow. But I also hadn't masked out any of my icicles that are hanging off that side of the porch. So unfortunately, I had to go back in with a Copic Acrea pen and try to add those back in. They didn't stay as white as I would like, but such is life. So I hope you enjoyed this drawing, but I do have a couple more things to say before we go. If you're in need of any of the art supplies used in this drawing, you can check the doobly-doo for details and links to each one of them. There's also a link to my Substack, and on that post today, I have talked about more of my art supplies that I use for graphite drawing because I didn't use everything here. You can go weigh in on what your favorite stuff is too. There's also a link to my Sandy Allnock Draws Instagram, on which I am doing a 100-day drawing challenge. You do not have to have started on January 1st. You can start today. Whatever today is, get started now. There's no time like the present. And if you need some help in getting something going, I do have a 30 Days to More Confident sketching class in which you can have your first 30 days of your 100 days covered because you'll have videos and prompts for each one of them. And then you can just do the rest on your own. I will be back here on Tuesday with a new video, and that's going to be more for beginners. I will post a couple of days ahead the reference photo that we're going to work from. So keep an eye on that and come join me with pencil and paper in hand, and we'll do a drawing together. And in the meantime, go out and create something every single day. And I will see you in a week. Bye-bye.